Hey, hello every pony, and welcome to another workshop. Well, this one might contain a bit less pony than otherwise, but we'll see what'll happen. So maybe there will be some ponies, like who knows. But anyhow, today's topic is kind of nature, or slash environment, landscape, those kind of things, and then maybe kind of the anatomy of it, going up close to all the individual objects or things within nature, as you can kind of see here, like trees or well flora, because like flowers maybe. Although I'm quite bad at flowers. For some reason, oh well, there's many flowers. I'm Dutch. I should be able to make flowers. Anyhow, and mountains always a good staple of any artist gallery, right? Right. And then, well, ground, kind of like grass and dirt, and the likes. Uh, which other surf? Well, like a desert, maybe hills or something. I don't know. Ground can be quite large, since well, technically, like mountains and such and flora are placed on the ground, so probably a bit important. And then water, of course, like nice a river or something, or an ocean or a lake. I usually make rivers, so I'll probably end up with a river, but I'll kind of go up close to water, hopefully. Uh, Although recently I've also had kind of rain. Maybe I can include some rain, perhaps. But that brings me to the next one, which is clouds. Clouds always fun, right? They seem to be so random, but then again, like, or well, you can keep them random. But if you want to do clouds, there are many different specific types of clouds. So, well, but I don't really differentiate that much between them. But I'll kind of go to what I kind of use or do when I make clouds, how I do those kind of things. But yeah, and then finally, kind of a landscape, or well, as you can kind of see in this pretty art piece, $1 million art piece here. Of course, when you combine it all, you create a nice little landscape and such. So yeah, maybe trying to combine it all, maybe like positioning, perhaps, or as in, okay, you're able to make a mountain, but where could you use a mountain uh, in your artwork, or where could you use clouds or trees and such? Maybe like that. In which kind of ways, in the big sense, can you use the different things? So let's start out. Let's actually start. Yeah, let's start with the trees. Let's go into the trees. I guess trees can be somewhat complex. I kind of see trees as different parts. There's kind of the canopy, which I kind of find the most time-consuming because of the amount of leaves and such. Sometimes I'm making the trunk and such. And the branches, and like I need to do those leaves, but sometimes I kind of cheat on leaves. I kind of treat them like clouds at times. But yeah, so basically the canopy, the branches, the trunk, and the roots and such, kind of those four things, or you can kind of call it three things, because like the trunk and the branches are kind of together. So I'll try to go through the different parts of trees and such, and then maybe after that some flora, some grass, flowers. What else do we have? Mushrooms. Ooh, there's many kinds of mushrooms. This is actually nice. Yeah, like you can paste some of those shrooms on the side of your tree. So well, basically, let's actually start out with the tree. Well, there's many kinds of, like, for the root system or for the base of your tree. Like, let's get this. Let's see, how large is that? It's big enough, I think. Let's get some roots going. Like there's many kind of trees. Some trees just kind of go like this. I kind of make the grass like some trees have their roots buried deep beneath the ground and such. So kind of like this, and then it goes up. Sometimes even a bit more straight and such. And you can keep also like I already did part of the trunk, and I just do that kind of by manually. I place those lines manually to keep it a bit natural shape. Like trees are not straight, so I don't really mind if my lines are not that straight either. But this is basically one kind of tree, like kind of creating that connection to the ground by not only placing the tree in the ground. Like if the grass was not there, it might have been just kind of like this, like just like that. If it was just sand or something, but if it was sand, you could kind of create a slight base of the roots, like this. So there's that. So if there's no grass to play around with, and even if there's grass, you can kind of still create a slight base of the roots if it doesn't feel comfortable to just keep a straight line. And this is kind of drawn from the side, like if from a perspective kind of thingy, like kind of like this around the back and such. Just like that, creating a nice base. And then something that usually doesn't appear at the base are those knots. Like depending on the tree, I guess maybe some trees have knots relatively close, but usually there's no knots. I think they're called knots, right? Like at the base, those are almost non-existent, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Usually they're a bit up higher. It kind of depends. I guess it's a wound. Sometimes it's because of branch broken off. I haven't really looked into that. I should have. But yeah, this is basically one type, kind of a nice little basic root system. And then of course there's other. Then basically you started deep down with the simplest, and then you can keep exposing the roots more and more depending on the tree, creating a nice base here, like different root systems, attaching them to the trunk, exposing everything. Usually it seems to be that way with very large trees, like at least like a meter thick or something. I don't know if there's a specific rule for that, and it still might depend on the type of tree and such, and of course the visibility might depend on the amount of flora growing at its base. And then like here it kind of goes deep in, and that is something you do have to kind of keep in mind when making these roots. They go into the ground, so it can sometimes help to kind of make that clear that they are going into the ground, like making the grass kind of bulge out here at the ends, instead of just suddenly the root disappearing down below, and just add some grass. Maybe like since here the tree kind of oh well, there's this if the kind of becomes narrow, then things might stack up here, like leaves might stack up more, like here in this corner, getting cornered. Maybe the grass is higher, kind of thinking like that and such. So it's kind of like this, and then maybe behind it there's some roots. I'm kind of making this in slight perspective now, so kind of this kind of roots, like really simple. Like I guess this one is most clear, and then the shape you can kind of differentiate it. Like maybe the root kind of goes up again, like maybe there's a rock here, I don't know. I don't think it grows over rocks, though. It I think roots, depending on your tree, try to find the path of less resistance, which seems to be quite a general rule amongst nature. Less resistant, like with electricity, water, things like that. Depending on where the resistance comes from. Anyway, this is kind of with the roots more exposed and such. Let's place it there, and then you can then just to kind of show the extremes are those kind of mangrove trees, which I'm not that familiar with, but basically those that basically stand on their roots, like the only thing that is touching the ground kind of is the base of their root system, and I'm actually not sure how the connection to the trunk looks with those trees. I kind of suspect kind of like this, and I guess the roots kind of branch off. With this one here, the branching off, like these roots also branch off, but more like underneath the ground. Although you could also do that above the ground, like a couple of them here, if that's if you'd like to do that. I guess that's still completely valid and such. Back to the mangrove thingy. I'm not entirely sure which kind of curves. I kind of just thought about these trees, but these are kind of the extremes, I suppose, of the root system. Although there are different situations, like, or well, these roots should maybe branch off quite a bit, like a giant webbing or kind of something. I think, like, you can kind of play around with that. Maybe look up some pictures, but that is certainly an option. But I think these root systems are a bit more specific to mangroves and such than the other root systems. And yeah, indeed, a tree growing on a tree, and trees don't necessarily have to grow on soil. Like, there are trees that grow on trees, I guess, or well, or like plants with root systems, similar to trees, and there's there are like strangle thingies that engulf trees and then kill the trees. I don't know if that's called a tree, but basically you end up with a hollow system of vines. I think it was a strangle vine. I guess, and that's something you can also add here at the base to kind of change things up. Maybe add a vine to it if it's rainforesty. But the thing of trees growing on things is an interesting one, because if anyone is familiar with the trees that grow on cliffs, like, let's make a cliff here. There's some empty space here, so let's make a simple cliff or something here, and then the tree base here. Some trees kind of grow alongside cliffs, so let's make some initial root systems here, like, and I guess with this they kind of sometimes can follow the lines of the cliff, but that kind of depends on if you already have a cliff system and such. But yeah, basically kind of like this, and then branching off again, and there. So those kind of trees are also there. But kind of to keep the time in mind, let's actually move on a bit. Let's move this here. Let's move to the trunk. This will be relatively simple, I suppose. Like, here, a nice little trunk. Like this. So, basic, right? And then you have to make it branch off at some point. How does that work? Usually, with ends up being a bit asymmetric, asymmetrical. Like let's make a branch that something that branches off from this side. So instead of just attaching it like this, again, just like with the root system, you kind of have to make the part where it attaches. Like it kind of bulges out, usually down here to the outside, kind of create that base for the new branching that is happening. And then at this side maybe as well slightly. So kind of something like this. Like to put some more curves at the connection that to make it feel a bit more natural and such. And then after that, kind of with all the branches, kind of the same thing, and then you end up going into the canopy branches, which are slightly different. Like the initial branching phase usually doesn't contain any leaves. Like the branches that contain the leaves are different, slightly different than these. They're a bit lighter, a bit less meant for stability and such, or foundation wise. And then like maybe like at this base maybe yes, a wound here. Like trees can get wounded, so that's kind of why they sometimes have these knots here. I guess there's different reasons. Maybe maybe a branch fell off or got cut off by humans, or broke off, or I don't know, maybe an infection. I guess there's different kind of reasons why a tree might have a spot on it. And let's quickly go to the bark system. Like there's many kinds of bark systems, and so like there's this kind of bark system with kind of hard cells. There's some trees that are actually smooth and more like paper like, and carve off from the sides and such. So that goes quite deep, but I don't know if I have the time for that, since time is going pretty fast. So let's quickly go to the next part. I guess the branches kind of just kind of keeping it random. That's kind of something you can train yourself to make things appear random. Depending on the trees you make, you might need different branches. Like if you have a pine tree, also a pine tree probably doesn't have any splits like this. A pine tree usually kind of grows like this, and then the branches it branches off to the side again and again, and then kind of creating those wafers thingies. So that's again a different, and they don't have leaves, they have needles, so needle trees kind of idea. So let's actually move on to the canopy real quickly. With the canopy, there's different things you kind of have to keep in mind when creating those. Like the amount of leaves. Take a sip. Like there's different aspects to the leaves. Their main purpose is kind of catching the sun, and with the photosynthesis thingy, blah blah, pronunciation, that thingy, basically the catching the sun, is one part of it. Like the leaves are trying to catch sun. That's something you have to keep in mind. But there's also the part of the tree being able to support a certain amount of leaves at different heights. Like if we kind of take a nice simple tree like this, like usually the top is somewhat thinner, or it kind of curves it depending on the tree, it kind of curves in. Some trees are more pointy than others and such, but in general they end up being smaller at the top. But besides being smaller, they are also less dense up top. So there's more and more gaps. That could either be through because of the support, like the branches being too thin here, but also to maybe let in a bit more light for the lower ranks, which would create a density in the center of the tree. So so those leaves get some light as well. Like usually the leaves seem to be at the outside, depending on how thin everything is. If the amount of leaves on each branch is low, then you'd probably be seeing more leaves closer to the base, to the base of the tree, like inside the parts in the innards of the canopy, kind of thing. And then here underneath, the smaller branches kind of die off because the canopy is creating a shadow. So the branches down here these seem to be a bit less populated by leaves, lower population, getting overshadowed. But that's kind of what I'm doing here, is kind of creating a silhouette. And this is kind of a line sketch. Like in lines, it's kind of hard to do canopy because each leaf would create its own outline, which is kind of hard to do. So I'm just focusing on the outlines and such. So let's kind of create some branches. So when I'm trying to create a shape or shapes, like I try to create blobs. Like if you look at branches, like it starts off big, and then it goes smaller and smaller and smaller because they start out as one branch, kind of as you see here, that creates a big general separation already from the start. So in clusters, basically, it creates clusters of leaves, of branches, kind of. So that's kind of my general take on trees, to create clusters of full stuff, and that it kind of depends on your style. This is kind of exaggerated, but like canopy, oh, there's so much time I could spend here. But yeah, basically, I kind of have to move on. So let's quickly move to pine trees or something. Pine trees were kind of different. They grow in quite a pointy way, and they instead of putting leaves everywhere, like they have needles, so they work slightly different, of course. It's still kind of in a different principle. They alternate. If you look from the top, like branches here, 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 like the base branches, and then the smaller branches kind of go into the empty spaces, so they don't block the lower branches as much. So it kind of keeps keeps themselves from blocking the sun a bit too much. And there's usually a bit clearer gap when it comes to pine trees. Again, depending on how dense they are, but kind of like you can kind of start as just with simple system like this, this kind of system, and then creating kind of the 3D parts where the branches are pointing towards you. Like a tree is not flat, so it also has branches that are kind of pointing towards you. And with a flat view like this, it's harder to do that. Like this center would probably be blocked off, kind of. You can block it off like this, and then here kind of like that. Like blocking off the center with the branches that are pointed towards the camera, kind of that kind of thing. So kind of to keep the time I spent on trees a bit lower, because I kind of want to go through the mountains and ground as well. although I guess trees might actually simply take the longest. Also, quickly flora, flower, leaves, depending on what kind of flowers, like creating a base, like uh, usually they have something to stand in. Like wildflowers usually have grass and other plants around them, weeds and such. Like potted flowers, potted plants usually have barely anything because humans tend to remove those weeds and grass, or well, grass maybe not, but like they're usually, the base is usually populated by other plant life. So let's see if I can actually remember tulips. Oh god, I have actually no idea. I guess this is close enough. So, flower. This is a giant flower compared to that tree. Oh well. And then, of course, clusters of flowers. I'm not sure how flowers work. And I guess you could also go sunflower, sunflower. Yay. And then like that. I don't know. It's been a long time since I've seen wild sunflowers. Let's see, what was next? Mountains, mountains, oh god, mountains, yes, mountains, so much fun. There's different ways you can do mountains, since there's also different kind of mountains. There's kind of, or well, I guess in a way cliffs or canyons would be the other kind. Since mountains are usually kind of by a rock face, that is kind of what defines a mountain, and a canyon and such usually has these somewhat the same aspects to a certain extent. There's the base of the mountain, and there's usually the tip, and it changes. It differs per mountain. There's volcanic mountains and such, but let's actually try to quickly make a mountain. Like, the origin of mountains, you kind of have to look at where they come from, and it's usually those cracks in the Earth's crust which push against each other. And what is important here is that it is a long crack. It is length. It is not one point that suddenly decides to go up. It is a long line that that is pushed against each other. So that is something that I keep in mind with the next thing I'm going to do, which is let's create a horizon. So let's start with the top, and let's just create random lines. Kind of this line here, kind of I'm making here. So let's actually make it go down here at this side. So here's the top line, the very top line, kind of. And then I kind of make smaller lines branch off from that. And if I've done it properly, this should already kind of look like a generic mountain. Because I use this system as kind of the basic, and I might make the top a bit steeper. Because usually the top is a bit steeper depending on the mountains. Like, I guess there's different mountains. There's no mountains here in the Netherlands, so I don't really have the opportunity to go outside and look at the horizon. All I see is hills, and well, our tallest hill is not that tall. Besides that, we're all below sea level. Well, most of us is below sea level. So anyhow, kind of creating these branching off, like you can make different lines going downwards and such. And yeah, indeed, not all mountains have earthquakes. Some seem to creep up a bit from just constant pressure. Like if you if maybe you've seen this in school, like one side of the Earth's crust going down and the other going up smoothly, that is, like smooth without shocks and such. Like usually earthquakes are when the two sides are like crushing into each other rather than sliding over each other. Uh, so it kind of depends on that situation. Like when they crush into each other, then the pressure can make them shook loose and such. So I guess there's different situations. I'm no expert on this, so feel free to correct me in the comments. So yeah, sliding along each other. But basically here, simple mountainscape. Like just in lines. Mountains can be quite easily shown in lines because their origin kind of comes from lines. So basically this mountain and then maybe some straight cliffs. I don't know where it maybe went down. So, but I'll just keep everything at a nice angle. And then at the base, like where it starts getting less and less steep, like there's this point, of course, where the rock from underneath is pushed up, but the further out you go, the more the soil becomes apparent. So there might be some soil here, maybe some tree lines, I guess, and such. Well, those trees are kind of big, maybe. Like, well, I guess some trees are big. Like it kind of depends. And then maybe here a second mountain line, maybe continuation of it. Maybe another here. I don't know. Add as much mountains as you like, or as if you seem that makes sense. And such. And maybe a second mountain on this side, and then a river in between here, since water might flow from the tops or something, somewhere melt water and then flowing in between the mountains. I think that seems to be quite common, at least with mountains that have ice or snow at the top. At some point, usually those seem to have rivers, or more so than barren mountains and such, which are also there. So yeah, volcano and canyon. I'll try to cover who I'm running because I'm running slightly out of time. Maybe I also want to do water, clouds, water or ground and clouds. Volcano. So volcanoes are the other kind of mountains, I suppose. Or well, the volcanoes are not really a result of the Earth crust necessarily, or well, the Earth crust sliding against each other, but more of like a gap or a crack somewhere where magma or lava gets pushed up and such. So I guess if anything comes from one place, which I actually mentioned before, that volcanic mountains are the ones that come from kind of one position almost sometimes, or well, they can come from one position, so they form one top. But they can look quite different. Like some are open craters, some are very wide craters and such. But some are actually just like this, like Mount Fuji. Mount Fuji is actually a volcanic mountain, if I'm not mistaken. Or was it? No, no. There are, maybe I'm confusing it with something. But anyhow, there's different mountains. Like there's the sheer pressure from beneath. Yeah, it's yeah. Okay, thank you. I was starting to doubt myself. Like, Uh, and Mount Fuji used to be different mountain. Like there used to be a bunch of different. There's actually different mountains inside of it. Uh, like a volcano does not necessarily have to have an open top. Like it can also pour out of the sides, or just keeps pushing the surface further and further without pouring out. Um, like it doesn't have to burst. It kind of depends on the substance, or on the type of rock, and the type of soil, the type of ground. A very solid hard ground that's in which lava and magma can build up pressure. Those usually seem to erupt, but those that don't, that kind of give away, I guess kind of tend to just uh, just give in and just grow steadily. Uh, so it's kind of like this, and these kind of mountains can have different kind of systems. Like maybe, like the origin is kind of that uh, lava system, and then maybe there's a branch or something to the side. Uh, so and then you can kind of apply the same principle as here, like creating those lines going down, maybe and such. But you can also just make the top open, of course, with those cracks here, and then lava would be pouring out there and such. So some clouds and fireballs shooting everywhere, like panic, ponies panic, no, run away, ah. Indeed, maybe there's this giant skull cave here, like lava pouring out. Anyhow, I'm getting distracted. Let's quickly move on to the last one in this kind of category I wanted to explore, and those are kind of canyons or cliffs. Like cliffs can be, I suppose, on the side of mountains as well, or part of the reason. Like, and cliffs can appear for different reasons. One would be the erosion from the ocean or sea, or a different kind of water source, where it just collapsed, where the land just collapsed and downwards, like those kind of cliffs. Which usually, since like I'm putting straight lines down here because of that, because the land kind of fell down. So I'm kind of making that apparent in these things. And then of course there could be like little plateaus, but usually those go down as well. And then at the base, maybe like if this was not ocean, like in ocean there might be some sharp pointy rocks that got eroded and such here, or a bit less sharp. But like at the base, you see there seems to be the residue or the results or the leftovers from what fell down, because, well, basically what fell down basically has to go somewhere. So sometimes it gets stuck down here, so that might branch off to the side, like a rock slide or something, like and then maybe some rocks. And I'm probably not going to be able to shade any rocks, and I have 20 minutes to go. I kind of wanted to go through shading of rocks as well, and stone, how you do that, and trees and such. Maybe I'll have to put it in a second. And now, kind of like this, and then the other kind of like a canyon kind of thing, which sometimes you see can contain a river underneath, maybe, and sometimes even grass, like grass and trees down there, maybe a slope somewhere like this. Like, I guess there's different ways that canyons can be shaped, either by water cutting into the land, or a form of earthquakes. I think earthquakes can create canyons as well, where the land gets separated. and such, but yeah, basically kind of the same principle I kind of use here, but you can also combine the thing of the mountains as well here slightly to some point where it might just go down and then just breaks off, or I don't know, and then rock slide. Like some mountains have been affected by rock slides as well. So kind of mountains, and cliffs and canyons and those kinds of things. So let's quickly move on to water, maybe. Yeah, water. Maybe I have to go into shading with water. Well, water, let's create a river. So we had some mountains down back there. Like, oh god, this river actually needs to be, or well, I guess maybe this is like the width of the Amazon River or something. Maybe that makes sense. So there's this kind of water. I make these shores themselves, and then usually the light, like if there's a sun up there, because Celestia was so nice to raise it, or Luna was so nice to allow her to raise it. And then usually I create kind of lines from there. Also a little tip for if you're making a landscape, quick little tip when making rivers. If this is your canvas, just a general tip, this doesn't only apply to rivers, but try not to end your lines exactly in the corner. If you make a river like this, don't end it in the corner like this, but instead offset it a bit higher. That seems a lot more pleasant. Like you start to notice it when the line ends where two other lines already come together. Like the canvas already has two lines here, so if you add a third one in there, it starts being noticed and sometimes even uncomfortable looking or unnatural looking. So make it go off kind of like this if you want to end it in the corner. Let's bring the mountains out. I'm kind of making a landscape already, so that's one water scene. I should kind of try to shade this maybe real quickly. Should I? Yes, I should. Just doing the water part. Let's fill that up. Like water, because the reason why I'm kind of doing this, I suppose, is that water doesn't really have a color. It doesn't really have any color at all. So water can be quite dark actually. Yeah. Like it kind of takes on the color of the environment because it is somewhat reflective, depending on which ones you're talking about. Like if you look at tropical places, the water is usually blue because and this seems to be somewhat because of just the content in the water itself, but also magnified because of the sky kind of reflecting into it. Like if it's a cloudy day, I think even in tropical islands the water kind of appears a bit more grayish and such. But yeah, basically here in the Netherlands we have kind of brown water, like the North Sea is brown, so yeah, colors. Like if you're working in values, water can actually be quite dark. And part of the reason why you might have to make it dark is also that it can help bring out the highlights, which are often caused by the reflective properties of water, since with the sun, depending on how high the sun is, and then like at the edge, basically try to illustrate where water kind of breaks. Like at the edge, water tends to break because it gets slammed into the edge. Maybe there's some rocks in here, and kind of the wind creating tiny waves maybe here. Like you can illustrate that. So 50 minutes to go. Oh god, I still have so much to do. I might just go a bit, take a bit of my Q&A time, unless there's some important questions. Part of it. I kind of want to do at least one type of water as well, and there's kind of ocean waves. Waves kind of like waves. They come in waves. Yeah, simply enough. No. Waves. Oh god. Depending on how high your wave is, like I guess it could just be like hills. Like waves can be caused by just the tides. So the source of waves can be underneath the surface or above the surface, like from wind. So there's 2 points where it can originate from. Just look at tsunamis. They tend to be caused by earthquakes, which is from below the surface. So kind of hilly scene maybe, but if you kind of go into a bit more like those epic warship paintings, those giant sail ship paintings, like they tend to have kind of a breaking point. They have like this kind of curve usually. One side is kind of curved, the source, which is kind of smooth, where this is basically the surface being pushed up slightly, so it kind of retains its smoothness, and then the other side is the surface. It's the same surface kind of being bent over itself or against itself and pressed against itself, so it tends to break a lot more at this side, so kind of creating that part, and then maybe another wave, so kind of having 2 sides to the wave, and that kind of creates this side, and then depending on how far you go, the wind may blow the top away because the water is thinner here, so the wind tends to have a bit more effect, so it does get kind of foamy up here. Well, not really visible here, but like just imagine that that's foam or something, and then here the water kind of starts to stack up and then maybe form its smaller waves as well, because this water is getting pushed up, but at the same time this is going in this direction, so the water kind of slides down, but because it sometimes slides down so fast it kind of goes over itself down here as well, so maybe some tinier waves here, and then maybe a nice little ship here, like, ah, Captain, I'll just put me shoot off on tickle to slap, and I'll slap that wave. Anyhow, like slamming on the ship. The pirate day, so I thought this might have been appropriate. Oh no. Arr. School flag. Anyhow, I'll maybe have to do an episode on vehicles or ships or blips and such, boats and ships, sail ships. Let's see if I can move on. Water, like ocean and rivers. Those seem to be the 2 main things. And well, I guess lakes are getting kind of left out now. And waterfalls. Darn it. Waterfalls. Of course. Darn it. I kind of want to do clouds. I'll do clouds. I'll do waterfalls first. So, waterfall. So there's different kinds of waterfalls. There's the tall waterfalls that come barging down from cliffs, like with all these sound effects, of course. Makes sense, doesn't it? Yeah. So these waterfalls, there's quite an important part of these that the smaller ones that you might see in forests and such don't have, is that because of their sheer size, wind comes in and disrupts your pretty little waterfall. So the wind has a nice impact. So droplets of water going here and such. If you've ever been near to any of those sprayers and such, those garden grass sprinklers thingies, you might have noticed how much effect wind already has on that height. And now imagine if you drop it off a giant waterfall. The wind has quite an effect on this, and if it barges down here, sometimes it creates quite a cloud. But the cloud is also partially because while falling down, the water already was dispersed before it even hit the bottom. Like, it might splash up a bit and cause more wind to catch that what gets splashed upwards, but most of the cloud seems to kind of originate from the fact that the water has been traveling downwards and been saturated with air already before even hitting the river that usually ends up being below. It doesn't have to be a river, it can also be a lake, I suppose, or even the ocean. There's ocean waterfalls out there, which look pretty awesome. And of course the wind, with those, the wind has quite an effect, which if this waterfall was in a forest, kind of like trees growing near water, that kind of makes sense, right? Maybe not these kind of trees, but maybe these kind of trees. So those might be blocking the wind a bit. So kind of looking at your environment as well to kind of decide how much wind there is around here, affecting your waterfall. And then there's the smaller ones, the prettier ones. And let's try to dissect the waterfall kind of here. Like, there's the top here, maybe a nice little rock here, where it curves down. Here is the transition of where the water stops being smooth. Usually the waterfall on top is relatively smooth, especially with the smaller ones. Like, the water doesn't flow that fast, and then once it falls down, once it goes from horizontal to vertical, it starts to become white and saturated with air. And maybe there's like little plateaus. I've done these kind of plateaus before, like with tiny waterfalls flowing down, such rocks. Maybe it starts going sliding down on a water slide, of course, because waterfalls enjoy water slides as well. So, and then the base, when it's small waterfall, it can actually be quite calm. No real dust or mist being thrown up and such. So it can actually be quite small with just waves. And here the waves can be quite a bit more apparent. And then of course the cliff, throw in a cliff side here, or tiny cliff side, or maybe rocks or something like rocks. I kind of also want to do some rocks, maybe. Like, let's make a rock. Let's take a rock shape. Like, for me, a generic rock shape usually involves like a line, a dividing line here, kind of like this. Kind of just like the mountains, like it cracked, maybe, like just like that. Like a sharp line sometimes. But I guess there's also the little sandstones, which are usually like smoother. So there's different kinds of stones and rocks and boulders and such. I guess this is more of a boulder. Here comes Tom. Like, yeah, just look at Tom. He has those sharp lines as well, which I kind of portrayed here. And it's kind of the reason why, like the origin of these sharp lines is basically where the rock broke off. So usually they are quite smooth, flat surfaces. I guess kind of depends. Like then again, like there's just so many types of stone, too much to go through for this workshop. Like soft stone, hard stone, limestone, sandstone, stone, rock stone, lava rocks. So let's quickly do clouds. 3 minutes until the Q&A part. Get your questions ready. Let's try to do some clouds. Shall I do some clouds? Yes, I shall. Let's put this one on about 50. Minus 50 value. Yeah, so yeah, let's make some sexy clouds. Of course. Clouds. Oh no, I'm blocking out the pebbles. The pebbles. That was what I was looking for. Now, clouds. So, yeah, clouds. Let's soften up my brush. Clouds are not just white. Clouds can be really quite dark as well, because they still, depending on the thickness of the clouds, they are darker. The reason why rain clouds are usually dark is, and why dark cloud, or well, basically why dark clouds usually rain, that's a better angle, is because there's so much water there that it blocks the light. So it blocks out the light, and that kind of indicates that the cloud is very saturated and very high humidity, which increases the probability of raindrops forming because there's just a lot of water, and that's kind of why dark clouds usually indicate a slight bad weather. Bright white clouds in the sky usually mean that there is not as much water in the sky, and thus it's less chance to rain. But basically, my point is that clouds have a thickness. They cast shadows. So there's one dark side to clouds, and there's one bright side. And that is important to remember, that clouds are basically shapes with two sides or multiple sides. They're not just white, they're white because of the light. So you have to kind of keep in mind where the light kind of comes from and kind of create the shape from there. I kind of just quickly brush. I keep adding things. I don't really remove anything. I just kind of keep adding, trying to keep them circular. And there's different clouds. I'm kind of going with a puffy cloud here, kind of a round cloud. Maybe the cloud is casting a shadow on itself here, kind of like that. And at the edges, the cloud is thinner, so the gradient is kind of soft. There's not that many hard gradient, or at least when the light comes from this angle. So this kind of one cloud. Now let's try to make a cloud where the light kind of comes from the other side, from behind the cloud. So let's make the edges nice and bright. So the edges usually kind of, or the edges around it are made, and then maybe there's some thinner clouds here which don't or barely have any shadow, like where there's like this stray cloud puffs flying off. Those might just be white all the way because the light just passes through them easily, or more easily compared to these giant clouds here blocking my sight and giving me trouble making it. So that kind of brings this cloud. Oh god, this one is actually quite failing. Maybe some back lighting. I see clouds every day. Why don't I know this? Like maybe I should pay more attention. I actually do pay more, quite a bit of attention, but I keep forgetting how those clouds look like. Again, it's dark out here. There's no clouds. And filled clouds there. Let's create another scene, kind of. Let's create a horizon kind of here. Maybe the sky can be a bit brighter. Guess I can brighten it up slightly here. So let's do that. Let's create the horizon. So let's create a cloud line, a cloudscape in the distance. Like, depending on, like sometimes there's this bright, like there's the horizon and there's the cloud line, and sometimes it's bright between here. The reason for that is that you have to look at how the Earth works. So here's the Earth's surface, kind of, or well, a curve, kind of. Imagine this is the Earth's surface, and the clouds are up here. The sun is coming from here. So it hits these clouds, it creates a shadow underneath here, but it also passes underneath this. So the shadow, like this darkness, is basically the clouds itself, this part, and things underneath here are kind of brighter and such. Like there is a gap in between here, and depending on how much clouds there is behind here, I suppose it might be different and such. But I'm not entirely sure how this works. It's something you can definitely look into, how the curvature of the Earth affects the horizon in your painting, with which part is bright, which part is dark, and how much clouds there are. And clouds have different shapes. There's high up clouds, of course, as well. And if you change the situation, again, if the light comes from here, and the clouds are only covering this place, then this here is shadow, but the light also comes down here. Well, you are like viewing from here, so you see this bright part here, but then the dark clouds, like this is your point of view, kind of, for example, kind of high, you're standing on Mount Everest or something, but basically that. So that is kind of why sometimes, well, with my work, I sometimes just create that dark line of clouds and then the brightness in between. Because also the reason why you might see everything, the things between the clouds and such, is that you might see the actual air. Like the atmosphere is not 100% transparent. Like it reflects a certain amount of light, your air, which I don't know if I went through that in my previous workshops. But basically, atmospheric perspective, like there's a certain amount of blue sky. On Earth, it's blue that's getting reflected. On Mars, it would be reddish, orange. But yeah, basically that's. And then here, of course, the top of the clouds would be bathing in sunlight. I'm walking on sunlight. Whoa. So yeah, and there's different kinds of clouds which I'll not go into. Like there's a bunch of names and different shapes for different heights of clouds, and there's the long stringy clouds up there, and well, basically like this. I use this soft brush, and again, kind of creating that shadow side, the bright side, the lighted side, kind of keeping in mind where the sun is coming from. Maybe the clouds are casting a shadow on the ground as well. So that might make the ground underneath them darker, helping with the atmosphere being brighter in between them and such. So yeah, kind of clouds, those kind of clouds. I suppose. So really quickly going through all these different aspects. So I kind of want to make a landscape as well, but I guess I'll do that while I'm answering questions. Are there questions out there on this for this? I'll try to combine all these different aspects into one piece. Oh my, I might just go for something like this, perhaps. So let's create something. I'm no Bob Ross, so I wish I could actually do that Bob Ross style to quickly make something. Actually, I might actually just try to fill by painting it. Cirrus clouds. Cirrus. I guess you'd have to kind of. I think there's images on the internet somewhere that kind of goes to the height. To the height of each cloud. So I'd start out with looking at how high certain clouds are. I guess the normal clouds are the cumulus clouds. So yeah, that is the first step, the first thing you'd have to think of. So then you kind of have to look at how much you want to have covered by the cumulus. Like you'd want to keep enough air open for the cirrus clouds, which I think usually seem to be a bit more like stringy or moving. So that is something you'd definitely have to kind of keep in mind when doing that, when adding in cumulus clouds. And whoa. Derp. And such. So I guess that's key of them. And then just basically, I guess you could start out with the cirrus clouds, because they get, or depending on what kind of approach you want, like since they can become covered up. But like first starting out, you can start out with the cirrus clouds, making them look appropriate, and then just making the cumulus on top of that, and then maybe you end up covering part of the of them as well. And I guess with these, it can be somewhat important to have a perspective line kind of going, kind of the perspective. I think that could help. Like with most straight things, it might be able to help making a finish point, having a finish point, kind of, I suppose. But then you'd also kind of have to keep in mind that since they are really high, the distance from the horizon line would be quite high as well. Like they'd be really small, extremely small, the further they are, and higher up than the cumulus. Because like if this there here would be a cumulus down here, the cirrus would be up there. And this indeed looks like a shoe. Bon. Look what I found. It's a shoe in the sky. It's made by humans, of course. Like humans made them. Bun 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 bun. So yeah, I guess this would be the approach, and I've never really done these high up clouds before, so at this point you might see them slide like their finishing point would be kind of curved, I suppose. Like you'd have to kind of make it in a curve. Maybe that would be a bit easier to do because they are just so high, so up high. So I think they tend to be look somewhat curved, I think. But yeah, kind of going through this. I hope that kind of explains it. Also, I guess there's also clouds that sit around mountains. Would those be stratus? God, I don't know what those names are for those clouds. Yes, let's add a mountain. God, I didn't leave that much room for my mountain here. So let's just put him here. Oh God, there's no order in this thing. Or well, actually, the perspective is maybe a bit low here. So some distant mountains here. Oh no, there's a mountain in your foot. So let's create a shadow side. There's also a part that I can now kind of talk about. The shadow side of a mountain can be extremely dark. So there's something you can play around with. It kind of depends on what your light setting is, or what your scene, what you want your scene to kind of look like. And such. That's something you can definitely play around with, and like depending on if there's snow on top, maybe make the top snowy, of course. God, a landscape can be somewhat hard to do in grayscale initially, or well, at least putting in details and such. So let's make a little cast shadow. Let's create a river or something like that. River, river, over there. I cannot cross it, 'cause I saw a bear fishing some salmon. He thought I was food. I gave him a shoe made of clouds. Wait, what? I'm not sure what I'm saying anymore. Anyhow, let's cry a river. Just like let's, and then the river is dark. Now let's bring in that brightness. Crappy river, of course. A tree. Oh God, oh God. No, I cannot make happy trees. Oh no, this mountain is too dark, maybe. Oh no, the tree is not too dark enough. Are there any questions? By the way, any new questions as well? Maybe. well, I'm failing at my landscape thingy. I'm really no landscape artist, I guess. Also that I'm working with one brush. Like when it comes to landscapes, those are probably the first ones that really benefit from texture brushes. Planets, the sun is a star, the moon is a moon. Ah, darn it. Planets. Oh my. Not sure if maybe a future workshop planets. That might actually be interesting. Little subtopic in the future. So I'm taking this totally serious. Anyhow, God, this tree is too much shading. Yeah, let's destroy my tree, of course. Yeah, let's destroy what I made. Yeah, blah, blah. Now it's a sad tree. You wanted a sad tree? Now I have a sad tree. My God, look at this abomination. It looks so bad. Oh no, what have I made? What have I done? What have I done? 3D Bell. Oh, wait, what? No. That doesn't seem right. So yeah, no further questions that might keep me from failing. Oh god, that would make me fail even more. Even more. Glasses. I cannot compute glasses. Cause I have no idea what I'm doing here. That's why I'm failing. Because this is a nice addition to the workshop, of course. From the top. Oh my. That actually might be a bit interesting. Satellite photos, you mean? Those kind of things. Huh. I've actually never really thought about that. Or plain view. Like, I guess depends on how close or how far you go from it. Like, for its satellite view is indeed quite different than compared to a plane view. I guess in general, like in a plane, uh, the the shadows are usually kind of obscured, since because of how the Earth works, you basically it's kind of hard for the sun to create a shadow on the top of the clouds, because the sun never really shines from underneath the clouds up till certain situations. Like with this, it might create a certain sense of clouds, but then the atmosphere plays a role as well, which keeps the top of the clouds never really seem to have a real shadow. So the shadows are quite limited to the bottom of clouds. So I guess in general, just the top would be quite bright, quite white, and uh, and such. Maybe I need a tree line here. So So yeah, and then going to the mm, satellite view, those would you'd have to kind of study the silhouette from above, since from that distance you barely see the curves of the clouds. I think you only kind of see the thickness of all the layers. Uh, so it kind of just ends up being a bunch of white-ish shapes. I assume. Depending on what kind of clouds, I suppose. I don't know which clouds are really visible from that distance. I've never really looked into that. Might be worth a check. But I'd assume the shapes would be somewhat simplified on its close-up essence, but made more complex by the fact that you'd have to create a lot of different clouds together into one big shape, kind of thing. So here, kind of tree line. This tree line really helps. So kind of what I did here, like I had these mountains, but the middle ground was kind of missing, so I added this tree line here, just kind of quickly. So now I have the mountains as kind of the on the horizon. I need some more mountains here. This for this river. Like I think in general, from a human height, the distance you can see the horizon, the distance of the horizon, seems about 4 to 5 kilometers, I think. So with these mountains back here, they can be cut off by the horizon itself, because their base can fall behind the horizon line. So you can do that with those at that distance. But the ones up closer, I kind of needed to show the base or kind of obscure it a bit. And I chose to do that with clouds. And here the foreground, these trees here, kind of keeping a bit of Bob Ross in mind. What he did, well, he did basically the clouds. He puts a happy little mountain, then a happy little tree line, then some water, and then some trees in the front. Kind of. That's I guess one of his many things he has done, I suppose. And something at this scale, what I kind of did wrong with this tree when I added the highlight, because of the enormous scale, you might have to be slightly careful with the amount of gradients you apply. Like you'd have to work relatively flat when working on this scale, because there's only so much value range you can work with, at least in digital painting. Like I've 0 to 100, like 0 and then 100, 100 value. So I have 101 levels to play with. So I'm keeping this relatively flat. Like if I wanted to add some highlights, I could add like one other value, but not a lot more. Anyhow, I'm running out of time. Is there a quick little small question maybe, if there is? Otherwise I'll go into the final part. So let's make this tree a bit darker maybe. Create a shadow here. Maybe make this tree here darker. Maybe add another tree here, maybe obscuring that cloud over there. 4 minutes to go. Or how long have I been streaming? 5 minutes to go actually. I can maybe clean this up slightly. Maybe oh no, I'm destroying the shoe. The almighty shoe. Let's create a level on top of that. Let's maybe create different clusters, separate clusters of clouds with a shadow in between, basically. Kind of failing at this, but I'm messing things up, but oh well. Maybe connect it more like that. The clouds are going at an angle while my horizon is actually straight. Let's increase the size of this one here. Let's maybe add some there. Quick little thing. I guess no color. It would be somewhat easier with color and such, because that gives you more opportunities to differentiate between the foreground, middle ground and such, yeah. Because like I said, the value is somewhat limited here. The amount that you can differentiate between, or well, at least in this in Photoshop. So, God, that's one ugly shoe right now. Anyhow, yes, I guess this was kind of it for nature. I hope it was somewhat useful. Like, it ended up being sketches, so maybe I'll have to, like, that would be an excuse to repeat this topic and expand on it by shading things, shading nature as such. Like shading the rocks, shading the canopy. The canopy is kind of simply done right now in water, properly doing water and such. So, but hopefully this was a nice start to get you started with nature or environment, landscape, the likes. So that kind of rounds up today, and next week should be, yeah, I should be having a workshop next week again. So I'll put up the poll on DeviantArt again, and I'll let you all vote. And of course, if there's a topic missing or a topic you really want to see, be sure to drop it in the comments. Feel free to drop a list of different ideas for topics or something that you want to see or want to see me fail at. Like, I think I heard planets today, and a second nature topic, and vehicles, I think, like the sail ships, maybe the blips, maybe vehicles from MLP, maybe kind of exploring those, the flying things, but I might leave out certain ones. I'll try to reuse the topics I had already in it. If I don't include these things, let me know, like I always said. And yes, so next week will be decided by y'all again, at least on DeviantArt. If you can drop it in a comment on YouTube or on DeviantArt or anywhere. Feel free to do that. So that is it for today. thank you all for stopping by. I'm on to my general art, or maybe till next week. So, thank you all for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.